Before David Goggins ever became a Navy SEAL, an ultra-marathon runner, or a symbol of relentless willpower, he was a little boy hiding in fear while his father beat his mother. His earliest memories aren't of playgrounds or laughter. They're of blood, bruises, and silence. His father, Trunnis Goggins, ran a roller skating rink in Buffalo, New York. Outwardly successful, inwardly tyrannical. He didn't just abuse David's mother, he turned his entire family into unpaid workers and prisoners. As a child, David was already living in a war zone, but unlike soldiers, he had no comrades, just fear and the instinct to disappear. Eventually, his mother fled with him. She escaped the beatings, but trauma isn't like a house you leave. It follows. It wraps around your voice when you try to speak. It hides behind your eyelids when you try to sleep. And for David, it metastasized into something worse than fear, worthlessness. He entered school with learning disabilities, a stutter, and a constant undercurrent of dread. He was one of the only black kids in a mostly white Indiana town. Racism wasn't subtle. It was carved into bathroom walls. It was shouted from trucks. And sometimes it was the silence of teachers who looked away. He began to fade inside of him, believing the voice planted in him by his father, then watered by society. You're not smart. You're not enough. You never will be. He started cheating, lying, skipping, not out of rebellion, but from surrender. When you expect nothing of yourself, you do whatever keeps the pain away. For David, that meant hiding in plain sight, letting the world think he was dumb or lazy, because it felt safer than hoping. But a small ember remained, a whisper of resistance, and it flickered the day he looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. He was in his early 20s, pushing 300 pounds, working as a pest exterminator. One day, covered in bat droppings and rat urine, something inside him broke open. Or maybe it had been breaking for years, and that was the collapse. He walked into his bathroom, looked in the mirror, and stared. Really stared. No filters, no denial, just truth. Fat, lying, afraid, living under potential, because potential was easier than pain. He didn't cry, he didn't scream, he just started writing sticky notes on the mirror, goals, brutal, specific, honest notes. Lose the weight, a study for the ASVAB. Join the military. He called it the accountability mirror. Every day he stood in front of it, he stripped away excuses. He stopped blaming his past. And for the first time, he started building a self that didn't run. And that's when he saw a documentary about Navy SEALs, men suffering, crawling through mud, shivering in cold water, getting screamed at, beaten down, forged. And it wasn't just impressive, it was spiritual. These were men who chose pain on purpose, men who didn't run. That's what he wanted, but he weighed nearly 300 pounds, and SEAL candidates needed to be 191 pounds. He had 3 months. That wasn't a weight loss journey, it was a resurrection. He started waking up before sunrise, running until his legs bled, biking, swimming, pushing through hunger, vomiting from exertion, passing out in parking lots. There was no plan, just a voice that whispered, "Keep going." And he did. He dropped over 100 pounds, passed the ASVAB, and got into the pipeline. But the path to becoming a SEAL isn't a single test. It's a gauntlet. And the heart of that gauntlet is Hell Week. Hell Week is a 5.5-day crucible designed to break you. You sleep for maybe 4 hours total. You're wet, cold, humiliated, exhausted. Instructors scream, drown-proof you, grind your body to dust. Most men quit. David Goggins did it 3 times, not because he wanted to, but because life made him. His first Hell Week ended with pneumonia, the second with a fractured kneecap. Both times he was devastated, not just physically, but existentially. He thought this was his way out. His way in, to lose it, felt like losing a lifeline, but he returned. The third time, he pushed through cracked bones and infected blisters. His legs were shredded. He taped his feet with duct tape. Blood soaked through. Every step was agony, but he finished. Not with applause, not with victory, with silence. But inside was the quiet roar of someone who'd finally decided, "You can't hurt me." Becoming a SEAL wasn't the end of anything. It was just the beginning of who Goggins was meant to be. He didn't celebrate, he didn't slow down, he doubled down. He became an ultramarathon runner. Not for medals, but to suffer on purpose. He signed up for his first 100-mile race with almost no training. He bought cheap shoes, packed some crackers and water, and ran. He ran until his body shut down. His kidneys began to fail. He urinated blood, lost toenails, couldn't walk. He collapsed, then stood back up and finished, because pain to Goggins isn't a warning, it's a test. He kept a mental archive of every hardship he'd endured. He called it the cookie jar. When he wanted to quit, he'd reach in, remember the times he'd survived, the beatings, the failures, the isolation, the broken bones. Everyone a reminder, you've done worse. You can do this. It's not about pride, it's about proof. Every pain you outlive becomes a receipt. But here's the part that most people skip. All this strength came with darkness. Goggins wasn't some one-dimensional warrior monk. He was broken in many ways. He struggled with relationships, pushed people away, chased goals at the expense of connection. His obsession with suffering wasn't always noble. Sometimes it was punishment. He was trying to bury shame under accomplishment. He wanted to outrun his father's voice, but trauma doesn't disappear when you win medals. It just changes clothes. In the audiobook, this side becomes clear. After each chapter, Goggins and his ghostwriter talk freely, candidly. And that's where you hear it, the loneliness, the questions, the vulnerability. He admits he wasn't a good husband, that his intensity scared people, though that for years he didn't know how to rest, how to love, how to forgive. He wasn't chasing greatness. He was running from pain. He also suffered physically. After years of abuse to his body, he had holes in his heart, sickle cell complications, fractured legs, and surgeries. Doctors told him to stop. He ran anyway. But at some point, his body forced him to listen. He began reflecting more deeply, not just on how much he could endure, but why he needed to. And that's the real gift of this book. It's not about becoming Goggins, it's about becoming you, stripped of the lies. If you want transformation, you need pain, not because pain is magical, but because it's the only thing that shatters delusion. Goggins isn't preaching hustle culture. He's saying, stop lying to yourself, stop pretending you're giving 100%. Stop calling comfort happiness. Your mind will always try to protect you. That's its job. But comfort is a slow death. And the only way to break through is to deliberately do things you hate. Run when it's raining. Study when you're tired. Apologize when you're proud. Do something daily that sucks. Not for results, but for discipline. You don't find your edge on a good day. You find it in the dark, cold, alone. He's brutally honest about failure. He failed multiple military exams, was told no by the Air Force, was called dumb, slow, too black, too broken. He failed pull-up attempts, lost races, got humiliated, and yet he kept trying because trying again is the only revenge worth taking. He also doesn't pretend this is for everyone. In fact, he warns you his path is lonely. It can become toxic. If you're not careful, you start chasing pain as identity. You start defining yourself by what hurts you. But the real goal isn't to suffer, it's to strip away weakness and leave behind something real, something earned, something unshakable. When you read Can't Hurt Me, you'll want to run a mile, then another. But beneath that is a deeper call, not to do what Goggins did, but to face what you've avoided. That's where the power is, the conversation in your head when you want to stop, the voice that says you're not enough, the mirror you refuse to look into. That's your battlefield. And like Goggins says, no one's coming to save you. No one cares if it's hard. You have to choose discomfort. You have to go to war with yourself and win. And if you don't know how to start, stand in front of your mirror, no music, no filters, no compliments, just one question. Who are you really? Then write down the answer, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. From there, the work begins. And the work will never end, but you will become someone you respect. And that's worth it. If you're going to read this book, listen to the audiobook. Seriously, the print version is powerful, but the audio is different. It's raw, candid, funny, honest. The in-between chapters feel like therapy. Goggins opens up. You hear his vulnerability, his laughter, his exhaustion. You hear a man who is still healing, still fighting, still growing. And that makes the story more than motivational. It makes it human. This isn't just a book, it's a dare to stop lying, to stop coasting, to stop blaming, to choose discomfort daily, intentionally, unapologetically, not to impress anyone, but to meet yourself. You're not soft, you're just untested, you're not weak, you're just untrained, and you don't need a permission to start. You just need pain and the decision to keep going anyway. That's where dignity lives, that's where transformation begins. Not tomorrow. Now, so ask yourself one last question before you go. How long will you keep running from who you could become? Subscribe if you want more raw, reflective retellings like this. Comment what book we should dive into next. And if you read Can't Hurt Me in print, go listen to the audiobook too. It's a different kind of truth.